We read so many books that are based in the United States of America, and as a Brit also a lot of British books, primarily English, but I thought it was time to highlight some books that were from around the world to recommend to you folks to expand your reading repertoire. Now I'm going to be honest here, Hannah from Ladder M gets all the credit, go find her down in the description below. I stole this idea from her, so go and give her some love. But these books are all my own choices, so although I do believe that she would agree with some of them. I have split these up into 4 different genre selections, so we're going to dive in first with fantasy. Now let's get this one out of the way while we're at the start. We have The Gift by Alison Croggon, who is an Australian author. This is the first book in the Books of Pelennor. If you're new to the channel, hello! It's called Abbey of Pelennor. I fucking love this series! It's a fantastic, high fantasy, at the time YA, but I don't know where it would be marketed now, series, and this series is my entire world. It is clearly very inspired by a lot of classic fantasy, especially Lord of the Rings. It's not inspired in the way that it is like Lord of the Rings, but in the writing style and the evocativeness and the inclusion of footnotes at the end of each book that make the world seem very real. And it is about a young girl who was enslaved. She finds out that she actually has these essentially magic powers. She is a bard, and she is rescued, that's the word, from the enslavement and ends up entering the wider world and having to save it. It's such a good series. I'm obsessed. I always have been, I always will be. Read it. Okay, regular scheduled viewing now. For a Japanese author, we have Before the Coffee Gets Cold by Toshikazu Kawaguchi. You've probably read this book, but if you haven't, I really recommend. In this novel, there is a coffee shop where if you sit in a certain seat, you can travel back in time, but only within the coffee shop itself, and nothing that you do will change the outcome in the present day. It's a really interesting look in kind of dealing with grief, about how communication is important. If you haven't read this one yet, I highly recommend. Akwaeke Emezi, who is a Nigerian author, they wrote Pet, they wrote Bitter, they wrote Freshwater. I've enjoyed a lot of their work. An Argentinian author is Mariana Enriquez, who wrote Our Share of Night as well as a few other books. This chunker is a very interesting horror novel. Fantasy horror, if it wasn't obvious. And then the last of the 5 for the science fiction fantasy section, and that is Zencho, who is Malaysian. I've read a few books by them. I've read a short story collection, I've read the first book in a fantasy series, and I've also read Black Water Sister, which is like ghosts haunting people to get revenge on a gang. I loved this book so much. Then we have some classics. So first up we have Heidi by Johanna Spyri, and Johanna Spyri is a Swiss author. I love this, even though it is problematic. It does have a lot of ableism in here, so please do be aware of that going in if you haven't picked it up already. The story is very sweet, and I read it as a child, so I do have that nostalgia with it. Then Things Fall Apart by Chinua Achebe. This is by a Nigerian author, and it is about the colonization of Nigeria by white troops coming in and ruining their society, ruining the way that they run things, their cultural norms, by inserting their own Christian values and how this ruins the tribe in the area. Then for a French writer, and that is Giono, the man who, I said that in an Italian accent, the man who planted trees. This is a short little story about, well, a man who plants trees in an area that eventually grows into a big forest, and it's about caring for the environment and how small changes can have a big impact on the world around you. I love this little one. Then for a German we have Erich Maria Remarque with All Quiet on the Western Front. This is him writing a fictionalised tale of how World War I was in the German trenches. This one is heartbreaking, very well written, really well translated too. I highly recommend. And then we have Dracula by Bram Stoker, who is Irish. I adore this classic so much. It is one of my favourites. It is so different to what we are told as like the pop culture version of Dracula, whilst also still being fairly close to that. I just really enjoyed this. If you haven't tried it, I recommend. Then for one of the smallest sections on my shelves, and it's anything that is in science fiction fantasy, classic, or non-fiction. Everything else fits in here, so it's a little bit of a mix, but you shall see what these books are. So, first of all, we have a Singaporean-born novelist, and that is Balli Jaswal, writing erotic stories for Punjabi widows. This is actually set in the UK, and I really enjoyed this. It's all about kind of overcoming the boundaries that may have been imposed by your culture that are not necessarily the best ones to have there, and how this can create community and a lot of care for people. Then for another Nigerian novelist, and we have Oyinkan Braithwaite with My Sister the Serial Killer, and this is all about two siblings. We follow the one that doesn't murder people, and the murderous sibling gets away with everything she ever does, and so her older sister ends up cleaning up so many of her messes, and it's about that dynamic. Then for a Japanese author, I have The Dragon Cat Chronicles by Hiro Arikawa. I could have picked up so many Japanese authors on this list. I read a lot of translated Japanese fiction, but this is one that I really love. So we are following, is it going to tell me the name of the man? Satoru. So we are following a man named Satoru and his cat named Nana, and they are driving around Japan trying to find friends of Satoru's that will take Nana in because Satoru can't look after him anymore. And it is Nana trying to ruin all of these ideas because he wants to stay with Satoru, and it's very sweet and very cute, and it definitely did not make me cry. Then this, I feel like, whilst it technically is American, it's not what we think. This is someone from the Chippewa tribe, from the indigenous peoples of North America, and that is Angeline Boulley, who writes Firekeeper's Daughter. This is all about living on the reservation, the impact that the policies that are put in place can have on people living here, the way that people don't care enough about the folks living on the reservation, and the impact that can have on their mental and physical health and their community. This is a brilliant written story. Mwah. And then for an author that was born in Kosovo but is nationally Finnish, and that is Pajtim Statovci with Crossing. This book is about identity, both in terms of nationalism and also in terms of sexuality, and trying to find a place in the world and trying to settle down and become somebody who belongs somewhere. I really, really enjoyed this one. Then for non-fiction books, so I have a few different things here. The first one is a little bit different from my channel. This is a Danish author, Peter Schmeichal, with the book One. This is a Danish footballer. I'm a Man U fan. He played for Man U and Man City as well as European clubs. This is his memoir. I, as a Man U fan, found it very interesting. Then for a Palestinian author, and we have Palestia Al-Akwad, who wrote The Eyes of Gaza. This is an edited version of her diary from the 7th of October 2023 up until very close to the present day, talking all about her experiences and how she was doing as a journalist and what happened when she did eventually manage to leave Gaza but had to leave people behind. Then for a Potawatomi author, and that is Robin Wall Kimmerer, who wrote Braiding Sweetgrass. This is all about how her Indigenous American knowledge manages to intertwine with traditional Western botany, and how she has learned a lot about her environment, and she's managed to have a huge positive impact with the melding of both knowledges. Then a Pakistani woman that I believe we all know of, and that is Malala Yousafzai, who wrote her memoir I Am Malala. This girl, I say girl, she's my age, so she's a full-blown adult now, but when she was a girl she was shot in the head by the Taliban for wanting to receive an education, and she then went on to get her education. She's been to Oxford, she's done amazingly, and this was written when she was younger and is insight into how difficult this has been for her, what it was like living under the Taliban, and you have probably heard of Malala Yousafzai and seen what she's done. And I did really enjoy this memoir when I read it when I was a teenager. And last but never least for the non-fictions is another Palestinian set of authors actually this time, but the editor, the primary editor, is also Palestinian, and that is Ahmed Alnouk with We Are Not Numbers. It was also co-edited by Pam Bailey, who is American, but we're going to stick with the fact that this is a collection of essays and of works by young Palestinian authors. Despite the fact that these are short stories and so easy to get through, it's also very difficult emotionally to go through. This starts from 2015 and living under Israeli occupation, and then moving forward into full-blown Israeli genocide. So this is a difficult read, but well worth it. I would love to know down in the comments if you have read any of these books, if you're going to add any of them to your TBR. Obviously, I highly recommend them, and I have read primarily, as always, British and American authors again this year. That is something I really need to change. But I would love to know your favourite non-American and non-British authors down in the comments below. I will say one author I haven't mentioned today, where is he? This is the easiest edition I could get, is Derek Landy, who writes the Skullduggery Pleasant series. He's Irish, so one of my favourite series, Irish. I was just trying to diversify a little further afield than the British Isles today. Thank you so much for watching, folks. I hope you enjoyed the video. Subscribe and like if you did, and I will see you in the next one. Bye!